morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Thursday, the 12th of February, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. The verbal war between Philippine senators and Chinese diplomats has reached a new low as both sides trade persona non grata declarations. While the Senate adopted a formal rebuke of Beijing's rhetoric, the Chinese embassy struck back by blacklisting the local officials of the Kalayaan Island Group. The latest SWS poll shows 54% of Filipinos are satisfied with Vice President Sara Duterte's performance, pushing her net rating to a moderate plus 28. This rebound places her ahead of Senate President Tito Soto and Speaker Bogie D in terms of public satisfaction. And church and civil society groups have announced the 3rd trillion peso march on February 25 to mark the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now first on the agenda. Following his diverticulitis diagnosis, President Bongbong Marcos can now be seen in more public events. The latest of which is the signing of a deal between the Education Department and governors. This is for the building of classrooms nationwide. Under the agreement, DepEd will release funding while local government units implement the planning and construction of classrooms. President Marcos says this setup could help avoid ghost projects.
Kaya yung iba madaling araw nang papasok at yung iba naman gabing-gabi na. At saka pa lang lalabas sa eskwela. Nandyan na rin ay mga mag-aaral na nagkaklase sa mga basketball court o kuminsan sa ilalim lang ng puno. As of December of last year, we have a classroom shortage that amounts to a stunning 145,000 units. How we have allowed this to become such a bad situation, I cannot understand.
Meanwhile, it appears the palace is taking a more neutral stance on the Chinese embassy's declaration of Kalayaan Island Group officials as persona non grata. Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro does not believe this is retaliation. It was the KIG municipality which first declared Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Jing Quan, undesirable last month. But before that, they also declared Jing's predecessor, Wang Xilian, persona non grata back in 2023.
Kung ano man po ang naging desisyon at polisiya ng China ay hindi naman po natin to saklaw. Katulad din po ng hindi nila dapat masaklawan kung ano po ang nagiging desisyon ng administrasyon na ito.
Well, Castro also blasted former presidential spokesman Harry Roque for allegedly being a fake news peddler. Roque earlier posted a photo insinuating that President Bongbong Marcos is wearing a colostomy bag.
Nakita naman po natin ang video, yung kabuuan kung saan itinaas pa po mismo ng Pangulo ang kanyang mga kamay habang siya'y kumakaway sa ating mga kababayan at kitang-kita po na ang sinasabing larawan o ipinakitang larawan ni Harry Roque ay pawang kasinungalingan lamang.
The verbal exchange between Philippine senators and Chinese embassy officials intensifies following persona non grata declarations. More details in this report from mobile journalist Mary Monreyes.
Ba't namin sila papakinggan? Sino ba sila? We know as a matter of fact, sana naisip din po nila na they're visitors here in our country.
Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Erwin Tulfo did not mince words with responding to recent jabs from the Chinese embassy. Beijing's diplomats in Manila plain rejected the upper chamber's resolution, condemning the attacks of Chinese officials against their Filipino counterparts. Tulfo insisted the Chinese embassy must respect Philippine laws. He added, it is the prerogative of senators to speak freely and air their stance on issues besetting the country, including disputes involving the West Philippine Sea.
Siguro kailangan nilang balikan yung Vienna Convention of 1961 na if you are a visitor here, a diplomat, dapat po respetuhin yung mga batas ng host country. Walang pwedeng magsabi sa atin na bansa na bawal tayo magpahayag na nararamdaman natin, bawal tayo magsalita.
Tulfo also took to the defense of PCG spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela. He believes the Coast Guard official has the right to speak up, especially since he is one of the defenders of Philippine territory.
It's not malicious. The way I look at it, I mean, the person, that government official, is just expressing in the ika nga, because he is covered, his statements actually is covered by our Constitution, the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. Siguro kung diplomat po siya, doon po siya sa China, medyo iba hong kalakaran doon, iba ho siguro. Pero since sila po is sa Philippine Coast Guard siya po ay isa sa mga nagtatanggol, yung kanyang ahensya, nagtatanggol ng ating teritoryo. So I guess may karapatan po siya magsalita. Because nagsasalita po siya doon sa ano po nakikita.
At this point, Tulfo is leaving the matter's resolution to the Department of Foreign Affairs. Still, he makes it crystal clear, no Filipino should be denied free speech and right inside their own country yet. For Senate President Tito Soto, it seems like Chinese Embassy spokesperson Ji Lingpen wanted to silence the August chamber by calling senators hypocrites and ignorant, and all because they took a stand. Soto also blasted Ji's claims that Chinese diplomats are being intimidated while continuing to be disrespectful to senators, calling their resolution a mere political stunt. The Senate President says it's again, respect begets respect. For her part, Senator Risa Hontiveros said she and her colleagues will keep on using lawful instruments, including resolutions, to put everything on record. She invokes Filipino lawmakers' constitutional duty to do so, even if it means a million statements against their moves. For Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the Chinese embassy's boorish response to an official act of the Philippine Senate is in violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. He said it only proves that China is a bully and lacks respect for international law. To the DFA, he says, ensure that the Philippine Republic's dignity is upheld and that its relations with other states are in accordance with international law and principle. Former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio has a word of caution though.
Those who take their oath of office, they say they will defend the Philippine Constitution. And in the Philippine Constitution, the territory is there. So if you're a government official, you should be careful because you have taken an oath to defend the Constitution.
Meanwhile, Kalayaan Palawan Mayor Bert Del Mundo reacted to the Chinese embassies declaring him and 15 other local officials persona non grata.
Wala rin po akong plano talaga. Hindi minsan na magpaplano na mag-isita sa kanilang teritoryo. Sunod ay hindi po actually ako mahilig mag-travel. Mas gusto yung pagmamasyal sa Pilipinas.
China's sanction came after the Kalayaan Island Group's LGU declared Chinese Ambassador Jing Shuen persona non grata back in January. Chinese Ambassador Jing Shuen acknowledges false narratives and sparks of confrontations as talks of cooperation between China and the Philippines progress. At a Chinese New Year reception in Taguig, also attended by First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, Jing said there's nothing that could not be settled by dialogue.
We cannot allow those misinformation to mislead the public or undermine bilateral relations. You know, one may easily win a confrontation with a smaller neighbor, but you hurt your relations with the neighbor for a long time. So nobody wants to resort to force. Nobody wants to fight with each other. That hurt our relationship for a long time. So that's why Chinese side always advocates dialogue. Let's sit down. Let's talk. Find ways to manage differences.
Kapatid mobile journalist Mary Monreyes, we are One News.
And in other news, Vice President Sara Duterte's satisfaction rating went up according to the latest survey by the social weather stations. The poll conducted from November 24 to 30 last year shows 54% of respondents approve of the Vice President's performance, while 26% are dissatisfied and 18% remain undecided. Overall, Vice President Duterte posted a positive 28 net satisfaction rating, the highest among the 4 top government officials included in the survey. Senate President Tito Soto registered a net satisfaction rating of positive 16, while Chief Justice Alexander Gesmundo recorded positive 9 and House Speaker Boji D received positive 5. Last week, the SWS also reported that President Bongbong Marcos had a neutral net satisfaction rating, which now stands at -3. And coming right up, a House lawmaker insists that strong evidence exists linking President Marcos to alleged kickbacks from anomalous flood control projects. We will discuss that and more with Caloocan Congressman Edgar Erice when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here on One News. Good morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. The Makabayan bloc is maintaining that there is alleged strong evidence linking President Bongbong Marcos to kickbacks in flood control projects. ACT Teachers Representative Antonio Tino said he saw alleged screenshots of message exchanges between the president and former PLLO chief Undersecretary Adrian Bersamin. It shows deliveries of billions of pesos and a computation of expenses linked to campaign activities. Tino said Batangas Representative Leandro Leviste was one of the sources of the materials, but added it would be better for Leviste to explain the origin of the records. In an interview with Sa Totoo Lang, Caloocan Representative Egay Erice said he was also shown alleged screenshots and ledgers and believes these could have been verified had the impeachment case proceeded.
Sabi po sa mensahe, complete na po ang 7.122 delivery sa akin. Tapusin ko po ang computation today. Kalakip nito rin ang detalyadong computation ng mga pinaggastusan ng 8 billion na kickback. Kasama po rito, pangunahin ang gastos para sa mga kandidatong sinuportahan ng Pangulo noong nakaraang eleksyon.
Kami po inimbita ni Congressman Leviste. Three occasions at hindi lang naman ako, hindi lang si Congressman Tino, may tatlo pang mga representatives ng Kongreso ang nakakita nito. Ito ay nasa kanyang laptop at pinakita niya sa amin yung buong conversation between President Marcos and dating PLLO chief Adrian Bersamin, including a parang detailed na kwenta ng gastos ng alyansa campaign noong 2025.
And joining us this morning is Caloocan 2nd District Representative Egay Erice himself. Good morning, Congressman, and welcome to Morning Matters.
Morning, Pauline. Morning.
Okay, Congressman, marami po tayong pag-uusapan this morning, but let's start with the supposed text messages between President Marcos and former USEC Adrian Bersamin. You said, Kong, na nakita nyo ito personally, but tell us what exactly did you see in these documents and how convincing were they for you?
Well, there were exchanges of text messages between the allegedly from the cell phone number of the president. Merong pinakitang number Ano to smart, 0918, hindi ko na lang matandaan kung ano yung mga kasunod na numbers. At yung isang number din daw na according to Congressman Libiste from the cell phone of Yusek Adrian Bersamin. So pinakita sa amin yung buo, medyo detalyado, which includes also text messages na hindi lang tungkol sa dito sa almost 8 billion, kundi meron ding mga ibang text messages tungkol sa ibang matters.
But could you confirm, Congressman, that this number is actually the President's cell phone number, since yung nakita nyo lang po ay parang 0918?
Hindi ko alam number nga yung Presidente. Sasabi ko lang, medyo detailed talaga yung conversation between those two numbers. And according to Congressman Libiste, got hold of it because Yusek Bersamin went to his house to prepare an affidavit after Senator Lacson, chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee, named the Bersamins as recipients of the Bernardo 8 billion kickbacks. So, natatakot sila na maging fall guy sila. So, gumawa sila ng affidavit doon sa bahay. Pinakita ni in one instance, pinakita ni Congressman Libiste yung TV footage nung pagdating ni Yusek Bersamin sa kanyang bahay sa Taal, Batangas.
And I remember that Representative Tino also mentioned that there was even a supposed text message, Congressman, nung 2 billion peso delivery sa Nara residence. Is this the same address na tinutukoy din ni former Congressman Zaldico, where he delivered sa bahay umano ng Presidente doon sa Forbes Park na Nara Street din?
Wala namang nabanggit na gano'n kasi Nara lang, nakalagay Nara.
Okay.
Parang ang instruction allegedly ng Presidente ay to bring the 2 billion na Nara. Yun lang, parang Nara. Then may binanggit na pangalan, hindi ko na matandaan. So, medyo detalyado talaga. Kaya nga sabi ko na nalulungkot ako dahil pinatay kagad ng Committee on Justice yung impeachment complaint against the President. Samantalang sa Rule 3, Section 5, yung aming impeachment rules, yung determination ng sufficiency in substance, dapat simple lang. Kung may allegations o recital of facts, tapos kung may nexus ito dun sa isang impeachment offense. Meron naman, kaya lang pinatay kagad. So hindi nagkaroon ng pagkakataon na may presenta ng makabayan black yung kanilang ebidensya at hindi rin nagkaroon ng pagkakataon para madepensahan ng ating Pangulo. Yung mga
But in other words, Congressman, personally, would you say na kayo po ay convinced that these screenshots and ledgers and materials are legitimate at it's highly improbable that they were falsified? And do you think Congressman Levista can actually vouch for the authenticity of these documents, or would it still need further verification?
Well, kailangan talaga i-verify, pero masyadong detailed yung conversation. At ang sabi sa akin ni Kong Libiste, marami pa hindi pinakita sa akin. And it was shown not only to me, but not only to Congressman Pino, but three other congressmen.
In the interest of transparency, Kong, are you willing to publicly release these screenshots, or do you even have a copy po?
No. Congressman Libiste didn't give us a copy. Actually, we are asking him to give us a copy. Pero marami siyang mga doubts, sabi ko nga sa kanya, So, you have to take the risk. Kung naniniwala ka dyan, mali yung ginawa, dapat you have to take the risk. Yun ang patok sa kanya.
Kong, what do you know about Undersecretary Adrian Bersamin? How heavily involved is he in these alleged kickbacks, itong mga SOPs? I know his name has already been floated in the hearings doon sa flood control investigation. Pero what do you know about Yusek Bersamin?
Wala, hindi ko naman siya. Na-meet ko siya siguro once or twice. Pero alam mo, ang problema kasi, yung investigation mismo ng gobyerno, laging humihinto. For example, ICI. Di ba, nakita naman natin, walang pinuntahan. Dami nagre-resign, hindi napondohan, hindi nabigyan ng mga staff. Hindi na suporta ng gobyerno. So, hindi nakapag-imbestiga hanggang mag-resign na yung dalawa. So, yung resignation is, I think, is a form of protest because kung meron lang silang, kung nasuportahan sila, hindi siguro sila magre-resign. Then, suddenly, yung committee on, the Blue Ribbon Committee of Senator Lacson, diba, pinanggit niya si Gumabel sa mails, pero hindi niya pinatawag. Pagkatapos hindi niya na binanggit. Pero sinabi niya, hindi nakarating kay Presidente yung 8 billion, nagpanggap lang ang mga Bersamin, sila ang nakinabang. After that, hininto niya na investigation. So medyo nakakapagtaka talaga. Tapos ito namang impeachment complaint, may paraan na sana para mailabas yung mga ebidensya, pinatay din kagad. So nakakapagtaka. Pero ako, siyempre, simple lang sinasabi ko, matagal na. 2023, 2024, 2025 national budget. Unprecedented in the history of our country, 1.45 trillion in insertions, diversions, and amendments. Nakalaan para sa mahalagang proyekto ng gobyerno, inilipat para sa mga flood control at mga maanumalyang proyekto. Bakit pinayagan ng Pangulo? Hindi niya na-explain bakit siya pumayag. Hindi naman isang taon lang, baka napalustan siya, pero 3 taon sunod-sunod, puro flood control. Naging racket na yung flood control. Bakit siya pinayagan? Yun ang dapat sagutin ng Pangulo.
Congressman, nabanggit nyo na these screenshots were supposed to be worth looking into, lalo na ng House Justice Committee nung tinalakay nila yung impeachment complaints against President Marcos. Pero kasama po ba talaga sa evidence ng mga complaints itong mga screenshots?
Well, there were allegations of corruption and kickbacks from Bernardo. Of course, hindi nila na-ipresenta yung mga evidences, hindi nila napatawag sana yung mga witnesses, hindi nakapag-sworn statements yung mga witnesses kasi pinatay na kaagad doon sa determination of substance.
But don't you think, Kong, na dapat sinama na lang din to para baka nakalusot pa siya doon sa determination of sufficiency in substance if these are actually verified screenshots?
Alam mo yung sufficiency in substance, very clear naman yung parameters na nakalagay dun sa impeachment rules. Actually, tingin ko, the Committee on Justice committed a grave abuse of discretion in declaring that the complaint is insufficient in substance. Actually, I am, if the Makabayan Bloc will agree, I'm willing to join them to file a petition before the Supreme Court for a grave abuse of discretion, a petition for certiorari.
Are there actual talks, Congressman, na kayo ay magpa-file ng petition?
Well, we're talking. We are. I am asking if they're willing. Then I will support them. Kasi hindi lang naman para sa itong impeachment na ito, para maliwanag itong process na ito. Dahil for example, in the next impeachment against VP Sara, nakita ko, ako, pinag-aralan ko ngayon, nakita ko merong sufficiency in substance. Boboto ako for 2. Kung mamaya patayin na naman nila, hindi ko alam. Sila kasi para naging discretionary samantalang meron namang maliwanag na standard.
Okay, Akong, going back to the screenshot, so what should be done with these materials? What do you think is the proper next step? Ito ba dapat ay iakyat sa ombudsman, sa ICI pa rin ba dapat ito, or should there be a congressional inquiry on this?
I think it's best for Senator Lacson. Kasi siya naman nagsimula niya, sinabi niya na involved yung mga Bersamin. So, bakit hindi niya ipagpatuloy yung investigation sa Blue Ribbon Committee? Patawag niya ron yung si Congressman Libiste. At kung meron pang iba, I'm sure, may mga binabanggit sa akin, ayoko naman sabihin, ayoko pangunahan si Congressman Libiste. Marami pang itong witnesses.
Pero on the part of Kong Levisa, sinabi po niya kasi na he's not yet ready to disclose all these, everything that he has, all the documents that he has. Ano? Sabi niya, he will do it in the right time. Ano po ba ang basa niyo doon?
An investigation of the Blue Ribbon Committee. I would think so na yan yung right time na pwedeng ilabas yung ebidensya na yan, patawag, sino yung mga pwedeng patawag na babanggitin ni Congressman.
Okay, now moving on to the impeachment proceedings, nabanggit nyo na nga, Congressman, that you have concerns over grave abuse of discretion on how the committee handled and eventually ruled on the impeachment complaints of President Marcos. How dangerous do you think is the precedent that they have set now that they are about to tackle the impeachment complaints of Vice President Sara Duterte? At sinabi na rin po ng kampo niya, they expect the same fairness, the same scrutiny that the committee had over the complaints of President Marcos.
I hope so. Sana hindi maging double standard. Pero ako, nabasa ko na. Sa akin madali, termination of form and substance. It's a impeachment complaint against the Vice President. So, ang susunod na step doon, dapat magkaroon ng hearing ang Committee on Justice para sa ganon, representa ng mga complainants sa kanilang ebidensya at mabigyan din ng pagkakataon si Vice President Sara na i-review kung ano man yung mga ipinipresenta ng mga complainants. Dapat ganun din yung nangyari kay President. Unfair ito, not only to the complainants but also to the accused.
Pero sa tingin niyo po ba, Congressman, itong complaints against VP Sara, the three that are already now with the office of Speaker Bogie D, ay lulusot po ba ito sa committee? And kamusta po ba ang appetite ngayon ng lower house pagdating sa pag-impeach sa Vice Presidente?
I can only speak for myself. Para sa akin, sabi ko nga, binasa ko at nakita ko merong sufficiency in form, may sufficiency in substance. Hindi ko sinasabing totoo yung mga accusation at kailangan magkaroon ng hearing. At based on the hearing, mag-decide ako whether makatwiran yung complaint o hindi makatwiran. Whether politika lang o talagang may batayan. Dapat ganun siguro yung appreciation namin mga mambabatas.
Okay, before we let you...
Dapat fair lang.
Fairness at the end of the day. Okay, before we let you go, Congressman, usapang politics lang po tayo quickly. Looking ahead to 2028, sinabi niyo po recently that the country needs a Pinoy-like president. At sabi niyo po, you miss the Pinoy Philippines. What exactly did you mean by that, Kong? At meron po bang kandidato na naiisip na po kayong pinakamalapit sa qualities ni former President Aquino?
Well, I think it's Vice President Lenny Robredo. Pinapatunayan niya ngayon sa Naga. The way she runs Naga, tingin ko yun yung dapat medyo scientific, technical, fair, at nakita naman natin, panahon ni Pinoy, tumaas talaga yung ating GDP, 7%. Nakita natin yung panahon ni Pinoy, bumaba yung utang natin. Siya yung presidente na may pinakamaliit na inutang. Pero napataas, kahit na maliit ang utang, mataas yung ating GDP. Pagkatapos, yung classroom shortage, nung pagpasok niya, 180,000 yung shortage. Pag-alis niya, zero shortage yung classroom. Ngayon, we're back to 165,000. Nakita natin, yung credit rating natin tumaas. So investment natin, foreign investment natin, unprecedented, mga $7 billion. Ngayon, wipe out lahat, halos yan dahil sa mga nangyayari. So tingin ko, yun ang kailangan natin, yung Pinoy-like presidency.
Well, Congresswoman Laila De Lima did say na para sa kanya po, ang most winnable candidate ay si former VP Leni Robredo. But is this something that is shared by the unified opposition? What are talks like right now within the opposition, Congressman?
Palagay ko naman, lahat naman sila naniniwala kay Vice President Leni Robredo sa integrity nito. At sa tingin ko, siya yung pinakamalakas na pwedeng mailaban kay VP Sara. Let's accept it, sabi nga ni Senator Dillon, talagang frontrunners, VP Sara. Kaya naman siya naging frontrunner dahil nangyayari, dito sa mga kapalpakan ng Marcos administration, siya nakakinabang. Diba? Parang gano'n. Hindi na nangyari.
All right, well, we're gonna leave that conversation there. Maraming salamat po for joining us this morning. That was Caloocan 2nd District Representative Egay Erice.
Salamat.
And up next, the spirit of people power lives on as organizers gear up for the 3rd trillion peso march during the EDSA 40th anniversary celebration. All that and more when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, several groups are set to hold the 3rd trillion peso march this February 25, coinciding with the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. The event aims to highlight calls against corruption and political dynasties. Activities will include a mass, a symposium, and a march leading to the EDSA Shrine. Organizers say 86 Catholic dioceses nationwide are expected to join the commemoration. And joining us this morning is Akbayan President Rafaela David. Good morning, Rafaela. Thank you for joining us here on Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline, and good morning din syempre dun sa mga nanonood sa atin ngayong umaga.
Okay, so mukhang all set na ang 3rd trillion peso march this February 25. Pero tell us, ano ba yung magiging official theme ng march na ito? And what's the overall message? Ano yung overall na panawagan for this 3rd trillion peso march?
Yes, no, the spirit of EDSA lives on in the trillion peso march at sa iba't iba pang pagkilos ng mamamayan para sa karapatan nila at lalo na kontra sa korupsyon at sa mga dinastiya. So ang tema po ng ating 3rd trillion peso march ay tayo ang people power laban sa korupsyon at dinastiya. We are invoking the power of ordinary citizens kasi sa dulo, sa isang demokrasya at yung demokrasya po na ipanalo natin 40 years ago, ang natural conclusion po niya ay dapat ang kapangyarihan nasa mamamayan din, hindi nasa iilang political dynasty na sila yung ginagawang parang personal bank account ang kaban ng bayan. At kaya nakita nga natin yung matinding flood control scandal nung nakaraang taon ay karamihan mga familiar families ang sangkot na nasa pwesto o merong ari na contract na mga contracting companies, ano? Kaya very important na this coming February 25 and the days leading up to it, magsama-sama uli ang puwersa ng mamamayan para ipakita na tayo ay titindig, hindi lamang dun sa mga pang-aabuso ng nakaraang diktadurya at hindi lamang para alalahanin ang nangyari 40 years ago with the heroism of Filipinos, but also to act in the present. Ibig sabihin ay tuparin na natin ang pangako ng EDSA, lalo na ng EDSA Constitution na nagbaban ng political dynasty. Magsanib puwersa tayo para tuldukan ang korupsyon at tuldukan ang political dynasties.
Well, as you mentioned, Rafaela, no, this time it coincides with the 40th anniversary of the People Power Revolution. Why was it so important for you to anchor this mobilization on this date?
Kasi 40 years ago, pinakita talaga natin na yung mga nagmamarcha na mga mamamayan ay may kapangyarihan para panghawakan ang kanilang destiny, no? Ang kanilang and history also already shows that when people come together, they can topple a dictator katulad ni Marcos at gayon din yung kaya nating harapin yung dambuhalang halimaw ng korupsyon at gayon din we also remember na 40 years ago noong napabagsak si Marcos, inanak din yung tinatawag nating EDSA Constitution at sa Constitution na yan ay pinakita natin na hindi pwedeng meron uling isang dinastiya katulad noong Marcos dictatorship noon na maghahari o hindi lang isang pamilya pero hindi pwedeng maraming political dynasty na sila ang nakaupo. Kaya sa EDSA Constitution ay nakasaad that we should ban political dynasties. At yung pangakong yan po, 40 years ago, 4 na dekada na po, hindi pa natutupad ng Kongreso natin. Kaya po very important that we remember the promises of the past but make sure that they are fulfilled in the present. Kasi gusto natin ng mas magandang kinabukasan para sa ating mga Pilipino at lalo na sa mga kabataan.
Well, as we all know, 2 marches were already held last year, no, in September and in November. For you, Rafaela, what did those marches, mobilizations achieve? How would you assess the impact of those 2 marches? That's why a third one was necessary this time around.
Napakahalaga that we sustain public pressure kasi yung panawagan natin noon hanggang ngayon dapat may makulong and we're at least happy to see may mga charges sa ilang mga senators who were implicated and some who public officials were already are already facing charges pero bukod doon kailangan din i-sustain yung pressure para matupad yung mga pangako na mga reforma na binitawan ng presidente at gayon din ng iba't ibang opisyales natin bago matapos yung taon. Kung tatandaan natin, ang priority daw ng presidente ay party list reform law, anti-political dynasty law, yung kadena bill that makes sure na namomonitor at natatrack natin sa napupunta ang budget at pera ng bayan through the blockchain, at gayon din yung ICA-IC bill na nag-create ng independent commission against infrastructure corruption. Kaya very important na itong mga paglabas sa kalsada at iba't ibang forma ng ating pagtindig through the spirit of EDSA ay mag-sustain ng ating public pressure sa gobyerno na tuparin din nila yung pangako nila kasi hindi naman pwedeng priority daw ang anti-dynasty law pero sa dulo ay hindi naman pala ipapasa. And we're already looking at the different hearings in the House and in the Senate led by akbayan legislators, kasama na dyan si Risa Ontiveros at gayon din ang aming kongresistang sila Chel Jokno, ay talagang we're pushing the envelope para siguraduhin na mapasa na once and for all itong napakahalagang mga batas na ito. Pero hindi pwedeng yung mga kampiyon lang natin sa loob ng Kongreso ang nagpapakita ng puwersa. Kailangan ay sabayan natin sila ng puwersa sa kalsada para ipakita that the people are watching and the people are expecting these reforms to actually pass.
And how many people are you expecting to participate in the 3rd trillion peso march? And speaking of public pressure, would you say na nandun pa rin yung galit ng taong bayan because some are also worried na baka mayroon na ring political and protest fatigue?
Yes, kasama naman yan sa ating mga pagpaplano. We're hoping na higitan pa yung naging marcha natin at naging protesta noong November 30. And napakahalaga this time around ay hindi lang ito magaganap in multiple points in EDSA. Kung titingnan po ng mga kababayan natin, we have several activities lined up along EDSA. Meron sa EDSA Shrine, meron sa People Power Monument, meron sa may Quezon Ave banda, malapit sa Eton Centris, all throughout the day of Feb 25. But more than that, 86 dioceses all across the country will also be celebrating EDSA with us. So hopefully with all our forces combined and sa lahat ng mga activities na gaganapin, hindi lang along EDSA pero all around the country, ay mahigitan pa natin yung mga nagawa na natin in the past.
And well, this protest might coincide also with the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte. How closely linked as well is this march towards that? We did hear Vice President Sara Duterte accusing Akbayan of political harassment pagdating doon sa impeachment complaint na i-file ng Akbayan. So what's your response to that?
Oo nga eh. Well, kung sa tingin niya, baseless at harassment lang, yung mga nasa complaint namin, ay sana harapin niya na lang at sagutin yung mga charges. Kasi parang ang dating po sa amin, parang kinakabahan ang Vice Presidente. Kasi imbis na harapin at sagutin yung mga charges, ay nag-video message na lang on a Saturday morning. And well, kami po sa Akbayan ay we endorsed the complaint, and some of the organizers as well of the Trillion Peso March also were filers nung impeachment complaint na inendorso ng Akbayan. Klaro po kasi sa amin na yung pagpapanagot ng Vice Presidente ay kasama sa panawagan ng mamamayan ng pananagutan ng mga public officials natin dun sa corrupt practices and abuses na ginagawa nila. Kakabit po ng flood control ay ang pagwaldas ng pera ng bayan sa confidential at intelligence funds man, at very important for us that we ask for accountability even from the Vice President herself. So important po para sa amin na when we go to EDSA, kasama po doon yung pagpapanagot ng all forms of corruption, including yung panghingi kay VP Sara kung sino ba talaga si Mary Grace Piatos. Kasi ang tagal na rin po natin yung tinatanong, hindi pa rin nasasagot hanggang ngayon.
Well, still speaking of the Dutertes, I believe there's also a protest action scheduled for February 23, and that's the day of former President Rodrigo Duterte's confirmation of charges before the ICC. How closely linked is that protest doon sa magiging message nyo for the Trillion Peso March?
Ang EDSA po kasi ang panawagan niyan ay para sa demokrasya at karapatang pantao. So we want to seek justice for human rights abuses of the past and the present. Kasama po dyan yung hustisya para sa mga human rights abuses in the drug war of the Duterte administration, lalo na yung mga nasawi sa extrajudicial killings. Kaya para sa amin po, parti ng panawagan ng Trillion Peso March at ng EDSA, yung panawagang panagutin ang mga Duterte dun sa mga namatay na Pilipino dahil sa drug war nila at sa human rights violations that they instigated in the Philippines, in Davao nung mayor pa, yung tatay at gayon din yung anak. Kaya napakahalaga po yung hearing of charges in the ICC on Feb 23 ay kasama ng ating pagko-commemorate ng EDSA 40. Muli, human rights abuses of the past and present must face or must be people who perpetuated these human rights violations should be held accountable, and we seek justice. Hindi lang dun sa mga namatay under the Marcos regime, pero ganun din dun sa mga nasawi dahil sa paninikil ng Duterte administration.
And I remember what really sparked the trillion peso march last year, Rafaela, no, was of course the flood control scandal and the investigations. And you have been calling for the prosecution of the so-called big fish. But after this trillion peso march, ano ba yung magiging concrete demands na hihingin natin from the government? What does success look like after the protest?
Meron pong 5 key demands yung trillion peso march. Unang-una na po doon yung people power, not dynastic power. Ibig sabihin, dapat sa ating gobyerno ang nakakaupo ordinaryong mamamayan. Kaya ipasa na natin ang anti-dynasty law para hindi puro political dynasty ang nakakaupo sa pwesto. Kasama rin po yung pagpasa ng party list reform law para hindi ginagawang backdoor ng mga kontraktor o kaya ng mga political dynasty ang party list, at dapat ordinaryong mamamayan, people power ang nakaka-maximize ng party list natin. Pangalawang panawagan, yung pag-prosecute nga ng big fish. Patuloy pa rin po yung panawagan natin na yan, at nagbabantay tayo kung sino ba talaga at makakauwi na ba si Saldico at maaaresto ba yung ilan pang mga alam natin na implicated. Pero kasama din po dun yung pag-recover ng ill-gotten wealth ng lahat ng mga mapatunayang nag-plunder. So we're still ensuring and we're monitoring po ngayon yung mga hindi lang nagsoli ng pera, pero dapat yung mga na-recover na hindi nila mapaliwanag sa nila nakuha yung kanilang pera. At nabanggit ko na po kanina, justice for past and present human rights violations, kasama yung EJK victims nung nakaraang Duterte administration. And finally, ang panalo po sa atin ay if we remember the sins of the past, the lessons of the past, we defend the Filipinos from historical revisionism, kasi nakita po natin marami nagsasabi golden years daw ang Marcos dictatorship, pero hindi po yun totoo. We will defend historical truths, we will remember the past, never forget, so that this history will not repeat itself.
And it's very important that young Filipinos also remember why we are commemorating the EDSA People Power Revolution, especially now on its 40th anniversary. So lastly, Rafaela, ano ba ang reminders nyo para dun sa mga nagbabalak umattend ng Trillion Peso March this February 25? At can we expect any notable personalities to also be there?
So kita-kits po sa mga kababayan natin. Feb 25 po, buong araw po ay at any point in time na kayo ay libre, pwede pong pumunta. May marcha po sa umaga mula sa EDSA Shrine papuntang Club Filipino. So that's 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. to commemorate yung oath-taking ni Cory Aquino. After that ay lunch onwards, so that around 12 bukas na po yung gates. Yung main program ay 3 p.m. Sa People Power Monument naman po tayo for our main program. Tapos, si Archbishop Soc Villegas will be doing High Mass at 6 p.m. sa EDSA Shrine. So, balik EDSA Shrine po tayo ng 6 p.m. And then, finally, magko-concert po kasama ng Ben and Ben sa Eton Centris by 8 p.m.
Ayan, so abangan natin yan and we wish you all the best. But for now, thank you very much for your time. That was Akbayan President Rafaela David.
Maraming salamat.
And in other news, lawmakers and other officials pay their respects to former House Speaker Jose de Venecia Jr., who passed away at the age of 89. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos is reporting from Taguig for the details. Arles, good morning. So sino-sino na ba ang mga nakiramay sa pagpanaw ni JDV? Okay, we will go back to our mobile journalist Arles de los Santos on that. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. Morning Matters. We'll be back after this. Keep it here in One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Sandigan Bayan has declared former Ako Bicol Congressman Zaldico a fugitive from justice and denied former Senator Bong Revilla's request for a judge to inhibit from his graft cases. Mobile journalist Arlis de los Santos has this report.
In a 16-page resolution dated February 3, the Sandigan Bayan 6th Division has declared former Ako Bicol Party List Congressman Zaldico a fugitive from justice. That is after the approval of the resolution filed by the prosecution in relation to the alleged substandard road tie project in Awan Oriental Mindoro worth 289 million pesos, where he is charged for malversation of public funds through falsification of public documents. This means Ko cannot participate in the instant proceedings and seek any judicial relief from the court and is not entitled to notices until his voluntary surrender, Associate Justice Sara Jane Fernandez said in the decision. Adding that the Bureau of Immigration Seats of Travel Records dated December 15, 2025 shows that Ko, an accused, departed the Philippines for Singapore on August 6, 2025 for medical reasons with no record of him returning to the Philippines. Although there is nothing in the records to show that Ko actually received a copy of the information, it appears that he is fully aware of the present case against him. However, Ko's camp argued that the former congressman cannot be penalized yet because he hasn't been found guilty and that he left the country before any charges existed and that he is only staying away because he's afraid for his life. The Sandigan Bayan Court disagreed, saying it is high time to take action against people who are suspected of crimes and flee the country to avoid the law. And enforcing such decision makes the country's justice system stronger and the legal process fair for everyone, both for the person accused and for the government. The anti-graft court also adds that the social media posts of unknown persons alleged to be containing threats towards Ko and other personalities can hardly be considered credible threats, saying there is nothing to support his bare assertion of fear for his family and his safety. Meanwhile, the Sandigan Bayan 6th Division denied the prosecution's request to remove Ronda Ine and Mendiola as counsel for lack of merit. Still on the Sandigan Bayan ruling, the court denied former Senator Ramon Bong Revilla's request for Associate Justice Kyle Miranda to inhibit himself from his graft and malversation cases. That is after Revilla's argument that Miranda should recuse himself from the proceedings due to the former's ties with Buenaventura Miranda, who lawyered up for former DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo before the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings to remove any lingering doubt about his impartiality. The anti-graft court said that Associate Justice Miranda's voluntary inhibition in this case is therefore unwarranted, as Revilla failed to present any intrinsic evidence to establish the former's bias, bad faith, malice, or corrupt purposes. Revilla's bare allegations of partiality and prejudgment will not suffice, said in its 7-page resolution issued February 10, adding that Buenaventura's brother is neither a counsel of party on the case and that Bernardo is only listed as a witness. Kapatid Arles de los Santos, we are One News.
Well, the Philippines slid to a new low in the Global Corruption Perception Index. In the 2025 report released by Transparency International on Tuesday, the Philippines had a score of 32, which is a point lower compared to 2024. This score, however, ranked the Philippines 120th of 182 nations, the country's worst showing since the index began using the 0 to 100 scale in 2012. In 2024, the Philippines was at 114th place with a score of 33 in the index, also lower than 2023's score. The report described the Philippines as a climate change impacted country following the flood control corruption scandal last year. The report based its ranking from external data including the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, risk and consulting companies, and think tanks. Going back to our story earlier, lawmakers and other officials pay their respects to former House Speaker Jose de Venecia Jr., who passed away at the age of 89. And our mobile journalist, Arles de los Santos, is reporting live from Taguig with more details. Arles, sino-sino na ang mga nakiramay kay JDV?
Pauline, so far no, sa ngayon ay payapa at tahimik dito sa Heritage Memorial Park sa Taguig City, kung saan nga ngayon ay nakaburol si dating House Speaker Jose de Venecia. No? Ang schedule talaga ng pagbisita dito ay mula 1:00 ng hapon hanggang 10:00 ng gabi. Pero kagabi ay talagang dumagsa na yung mga dating opisyal ng pamahalaan at kasalukuyang mga namumuno sa bansa para nga magpaabot ng kanilang pakikiramay sa pamilya ni de Venecia. No? Kasama dyan sina Senator Kiko Pangilinan, former Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Mark Villar, former Vice President Jojo Marbinay, gayon din si Cavite District Representative Lani Mercado Revilla, gayon din si dating House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Napakatahimik at payapa ng atmosphere dito at puno talaga ng bulaklak yung kung saan namamalagin ngayon nakalagak yung katawan ni dating House Speaker Jose de Venecia. Merong military personnel sa kanya at yung watawat ng Pilipinas ay nandoon din, no, at inaasahan natin na magpapatuloy yung pagdating ng mga kababayan natin at mga taga-suporta ni de Venecia sa paparating pang mga araw bago nga ilagak ang labi nito dito rin sa Heritage Memorial Park sa Taguig City.
Arles, hanggang kailan ba ang burol ni former House Speaker JDV dyan sa Heritage?
Hanggang February 13 ang huli nating nakuha ang informasyon, Pauline, kung saan magiging public nga itong viewing na ito bago mapunta doon sa huling araw ng lamay at bago ilibing ang dating House Speaker.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update. That was mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting live from Taguig. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make this day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.